Summer, 1981. One of the most sorrowful and unforgettable seasons of one woman's life. Unfortunately, she was not unfamiliar with such tragedies. The previous scenes of her life played out like an agonizingly long movie that would serve to either deeply depress or have no impact on those who viewed it, depending on who had enough empathy toward people like her. Ignored, beaten, accused, blamed, and shamed for over 2 decades by not only the people she'd barely ever interacted with out of her own free will at school, but also by the people she had wished so much to be able to trust. Not a brother, nor a sister, not even the woman who had bore her and all 7 of her siblings, came to her defense in times of misery, which Elle, and that's what I'll be calling her in this story, was constantly drowning in since the day she entered the world. And that pain only increased as her knowledge and intuitive nature blossomed with age, beginning back before she could even form a sentence. When Elle turned 18, that meant she was free. Free of any more whips from her father's belt, free of her mother's judgment and additional beatings that left her with scars as deep as the sharp words school bullies shot at her. Most of all, she was free to finally claim full control of her own life. Until the man she had met at the age of 17 marked the beginning of another hellish stage she would be forced to endure. Using fear, guilt, and manipulation to rob her of whatever hope and innocence that remained within her, this man, whom she felt she had to share herself with out of hurtful peer pressure, turned out to be just another piece of proof that life, in general, was unashamedly against her. After 5 long years of being slowly conditioned into corruption, Elle was drained of any mental strength or happiness her mind had tried desperately to hold on to. Now, at age 24, she lay in the small bedroom of a close friend's house, her heart being squeezed to death by the emotional torment of lost hope. Nothing in the world in that moment could have numbed the pain. No alcohol, no drugs, no friends, no family, no inner light shimmering from the depth of her tarnished soul. Her whole world had vanished into a black, meaningless void. Again, it seemed like life was against her. And now, after having made some of the worst decisions she could ever conceive, and with an intense sense of regret hanging over her head 24/7, she was left to feel that she deserved it. A large, painful pill to swallow, is it not? For most people, the answer would be yes, and it was Elle's answer for the longest time. But then, she had to swallow an even bigger pill, one that felt, as they say, too good to be true, going down. If God is for us, who can be against us? On that night, the tears had reached past the point of being too much to bear. Not that it mattered all that much to Elle. After all, nobody in all the years she'd been alive had ever cared about the hurt she wore on her face, or heard her sobs of wondering why she was being punished for seemingly no reason. Nobody cared. Nobody she could physically see, at least. Little did she know that the thousands of days of endless agony were about to be wiped from her memory in the relieving moments of sleep, if only for a short while. Quietude, comfort, wholesomeness, and holiness, a place unlike any other, without the earthly concept of time. There she stood in a massive auditorium, close to 3 stories high. Pristine, varnished oak wood floors, railings and columns surrounded her, along with a similarly massive stage, about 5 feet off the ground, made of the same spotless material. The giant dark red drapes adorning the stage accentuated the simple yet awe-inspiring atmosphere. Remaining unnoticed, her ears took in the hushed, soothing conversations among many unfamiliar faces gathered together in circles, each person, all of a young age, continued on with the pleasant talk while holding paper plates of food, which I found to be rather odd, says Elle. She also recalls seeing very dim lighting around the people, like a light off in the distance, she says. In this peaceful world, where the pain seemed to have melted right off of her, Elle's heart, though still unsure of what was to come, was ready to face anything because, for the first time, she was in a place where she would never be hurt, only loved. And what came next would be like a warm blanket for her soul. Elle continues the story in her own words. Then, the next thing I knew, the drapes were opened. Then I see Jesus. He's sitting in a corner of the stage, and there's children around and adults around. The lighting around him was as if it were daylight. No one was speaking loud at all, and Jesus was speaking to an adult here and there, to a child here and there, and I was sort of waiting for my turn to see him. Jesus was wearing a white robe, and his hair was shorter and layered and darker than any pictures on earth have ever depicted. And his face was animated, and it's as if I was watching myself. In the back of my head, as I sat in his lap and made a move to put my arms around him in a hug, and as the back of my head was passing in front of him, I saw his brown, animated eyes, and then his face changed from animated to real human features. I could only see the side of his face. I could no longer see his eyes. And as I'm hugging him, he whispers in my ear, "Don't you know how much I love you? I love you so much." The words of the Savior penetrated her entire being. The embrace was incredibly comforting. A warmth ran through my core, and after she stood from his lap, I was like in awe. It was just awesome. It was almost like I was doing a double take, like, let me understand what I'm seeing here. There was no chair. I woke up from my dream on my back, with my hands crossed over my chest, and before I could open my eyes, I felt a warmth down the center of my body and a smile on my face. It was the most peaceful feeling I had ever felt. Remembering Jesus' embrace, it was the most meaningful embrace I'd ever had. I was deeply depressed over the breakup of a 5-year relationship, and it had been about 1 year since the breakup. He had promised to marry me, had given me a ring and everything, taken my virginity, forced me to have 3 abortions, and he threatened me, or else. And I just couldn't get past it. But after the dream, I realized my boyfriend did me a favor by breaking up with me, and I escaped my depression. I still remember the dream 40 years later, like it happened this morning. Furthermore, Elle tells me, by retelling it step by step, I remembered more details. This life-changing experience would be the first of 3 heavenly dreams occurring within months of each other, the latter 2 of which will be told here on this channel in due time. Thank you for listening, and remember to always look to the one who cares for you more than any other.